Business News with Brian Quinn. He's starting in London, hosting that first bilateral summit Dave Keating was telling us about between the UK and the EU since Brexit, Brian.
So as Dave was just reporting there, Stuart, 5 years since Britain officially quit the EU, the two sides have reportedly reached a tentative agreement to reset relations amid an increasingly perilous global trade context. After negotiations that stretched into late Sunday night, they are expected to sign a security and defence partnership Monday, as well as a plan for deeper economic cooperation. London trying to pare back the trade barriers put in place since Brexit. It's a crucial goal, as the EU accounts for 41% of the UK's exports. The talks have not been easy. Brussels has been insisting that London accept any new EU agriculture regulations, also known as those SPS rules. That, though, could, of course, make it harder for the UK to finalise an agricultural deal with the US. The Europeans also demanding that the UK grant long-term fishing rights to Europe and UK waters. Mobility, another key negotiating point. The UK wanting easier access to the EU for British touring musicians, while the EU wants easier access to British universities for European students. The UK apparently getting the right for its defence firms to be allowed to bid for European military contracts as the continent rearms. That element does appear to have been approved. Here is the British Minister for European Relations speaking to the BBC on Sunday.
We are not looking back to the battles of the past. We are looking at the situation that the United Kingdom finds itself in the mid-2020s on the international stage. We've been putting Britain back on the international stage, trade deals with India, trade deals with the United States, and now we want to deliver that arrangement with the European Union.
Now, next, global financial markets bracing for a new shock to the system Monday after the US lost its last perfect credit rating.
Well, Stuart, Friday evening saw ratings agency Moody's downgrade America's credit from its top level AAA down to AA1. It's the third major agency to do so. Fitch downgraded America's credit in 2023. S&P Global had already done so as early as 2011. It all comes down to America's debt and interest ratios. Moody's expects the U.S. debt level to hit 134% of GDP within a decade, up from its current level of 98%. Interest payments on the national debt are expected to hit $952 billion this year. That makes up the largest portion of the U.S. federal budget at 18.4%. The amount is projected to hit $1.8 trillion in 2035. The downgrade echoes concerns of fiscal hardline Republicans who on Friday blocked Donald Trump's signature domestic policy bill. That bill would make permanent his massive 2017 tax cuts on corporations and the wealthy. The administration wants to offset those tax cuts with cuts to social programs for the poor and clean energy subsidies. Republicans did allow that bill to continue in negotiations on late Sunday night that saw it pushed through to a further vote. Democrats say it amounts to stealing from the poor to feed the rich. Take a listen.
This bill actually adds trillions of dollars to the deficit. I'm serious. I'm not making this up. Trillions of dollars to the deficit being added. So people will lose health care, kids and the veterans will go hungry, rural hospitals face closures, and yet the very rich will get even richer at the expense of our children and grandchildren who will shoulder the burden of that additional debt.
So how's that downgrade then, Brian, playing out on the stock market so far?
Well, Asian indexes mostly lost ground on Monday as investors are digesting that lack of confidence in America's credit worthiness. The potential for a sell-off in U.S. dollars is threatening to send the yen higher. That would be bad news for Japanese exporters. Nikkei in Tokyo off around 0.2%. New data out of China, meanwhile, shows retail sales growth came in at 5.1%. For April. That's missing analyst expectations. Hong Kong off by just over 0.1%. Shanghai just barely north of the flat line. Here in Europe, major indexes sinking at the open as well. London and Paris each down 0.3% despite that news of a breakthrough in the post-Brexit trade agreement between the EU and the UK.
Finally for business, a big day for France. The annual Choose France Investment Summit kicking off in Versailles.
Monday marks the opening of the 8th edition of Choose France. The summit aims to showcase the country as a destination for foreign investment. Last year's gathering saw 56 projects announced across a variety of sectors, including pharma, logistics, food, and finance. But uncertainty on global markets, fueled in part by Donald Trump's tariff wars, is making entrepreneurs wary and making large investments more difficult to attract. Siobhan Silk has more.
A Wall Street giant eyes expansion in France. JP Morgan Investment Bank plans to open a new office in Paris to house 1,000 employees. A preview of the kind of deals the government hopes will emerge from the 8th edition of Choose France, the annual summit aimed at luring foreign investors.
First, in France, we need stability, and we have to follow up this strategy. Supply-side policy is the right approach. And this is the jobs for the 2 years to come, and I think it's feasible.
200 company bosses are attending Choose France in Versailles, and President Macron intends to meet many of them in person. The government wants to beat last year's record of €15 billion worth of projects announced at the summit. They helped make France the top European destination for foreign direct investment, FDI, for the 6th year in a row. But it retained that spot despite a fall of 14% in the number of projects in 2024, according to a report by consultancy firm EY. Other top destinations, UK and Germany, saw similar dips. Across Europe as a whole, FDI projects were down 5%, and the number of jobs created by FDI fell by 16%. Analysts say geopolitical tensions, economic instability and rising trade barriers are spooking investors. Donald Trump's global trade war is feeding the uncertainty and hesitation. But France's economy minister wants to sell investors on Europe's political and regulatory stability and reliable rule of law, a refuge from the chaos.
And we, of course, have a France 24 business team on the ground there at that Choose France Summit, Stuart, and we will be bringing you more from it throughout the day here on France 24.
Looking forward to it, Brian. Thank you.